Good morning. This is the Emerging Business Team Morning Coffee. We launched Future of Retail website and a year-long research, futureofretail.io. And Mia is going to present the site to you, and we're going to tell about the process. This has been a big collaboration. Like yesterday, we had the launch webinar, and we had some of the collaborators there. So Kesko and Olvi and Berner and Aalto University joined us yesterday, but of course we have more collaborators. We have Valio, for example, on Columbia Road, and Pasi Virtakari Design, and Hopkins and Vima, and many more, and 100 plus Futurice people. Mia Muurimäki, Design Director at Futurice, who loves trend research, speculative thinking, all kind of what-if questions, and we've been working together this year now with this research. I'm going to hand over to Mia.
So this is the site where we are communicating the Future of Retail 2030 vision. It shares our idea of the 7 key opportunity areas. It has a quite big original trend set, and all of the kind of like materials are also backed up. If you go a little bit to the end of the site, there are the kind of crown jewels, which are the 4 stories or prototypes that we wanted to share about the future of retail. We have like surprisingly many high quality blogs also here. And here are the kind of collaborators we worked with during this process. And you can also download the full vision as a PDF. There are sound files. So each of these stories can be also listened to. There's some design fiction or prototyping involved here. So there are kind of like these imaginary products and services here. Our experts have given them a treat. What are the key things that need to be kind of changed for this sort of like vision to become reality? We have a pretty sturdy package of methods in Futurice. We have meticulously kind of tried to communicate the way we like to do futures. We have Lean Futures Creation Set that is kind of compiled of 4 different canvas sets. The one of them is scoping and horizon scanning. Then there are tools for scenario building. And then there's this sort of like more explorative prototyping set, which is more about like creating prototypes like we did in this process. And then very importantly, in the end, there's this evaluation and roadmap. What would you have to do to your business in order to kind of like harness the full potential of what you found in your futures research? First of all, we started with crowdsourcing, and just like Annina said, many of you participated in, we had this Vima tool where we collected more than 100 clues about your ideas of how the future of retail is going to look like, meaning how's the shopping going to evolve, be that groceries or fashion or whatnot. So we asked you and you answered, and you also provided us with a lot of links. Then we did a kind of big Pestle analysis. So we created this big mirror board where we kind of created this bird view of the processes that are involved in retail. So starting with research and development and farming, and where you get the resources for the products, and then forward to branding, packaging, logistics, the sales points themselves, all the way to kind of recycling and reusing the materials that have been involved in the process. So we did this, and then we categorized it through Pestle Analysis, meaning political, economic, social, technological, legal, and ecological implications. And we noted that there were many holes that we needed to do more research on. Then we did the trend set that I just showed you. We kind of had to close in the first diamond of the double diamond process and come up with this. So we managed to distill our view into 23 key trends, based on which we did a futures table, and then we continued into kind of like producing these prototypes. So as you can see, we didn't create your basic usual scenarios. We created prototypes that are a little bit of a different sort of beast. So here are our prototypes. We created 4 stories from the future that are qualitatively very different from each other. Usually when you're working with scenarios, you have similar variables that you are working with. You are following, let's say, 5 things, 5 key trends or topics, and then you are finding out how those 5 topics might have different outcomes in the future. And then for the scenarios, you select different combinations. So in a way, you have like different alternative versions of the same world. But in our work, which was more about prototyping, we created qualitatively different sort of things. And this was because we wanted to communicate many different technologies, basically. So in each of these stories, the shopping is done in a different way. If I start from the lower left corner, it's a story that contains a lot of like social shopping. And in that story, there is also the brick and mortar shops are still strong, and they have found a way of entertaining and being relevant to people. Also kind of like this hybrid way of shopping is very much in the core of this story. If you're in the happy side, let's say you're trusting the services and are happy to give your data out to the key players in the retail system, you have this story of a lady who has given a lot of her very personal, intimate data to get her groceries as a service every week delivered to her home. So it's this sort of, we wanted to kind of share an idea that there might be new companies that are trying to rearrange this sort of delivery of goods and collecting of data from people, doing it in a kind of secure way, trustworthy way, and then how we can kind of mass customize these sort of weekly deliveries of goods to people. Then when you go to the other side, which is kind of like, it says suspicious, but it means that there are some shadows and some partly nostalgic, but partly also very future forward tendencies in the stories. If you go to the lower right hand side, there is this lady who is kind of like living in a world where consuming has become very politicized. So the climate change has moved forward rapidly, and people are fighting over what is kind of like what is okay to consume and what is not. In that world, people are ordering their groceries through voice UI, and since they are very insecure of what they should be buying, they give a lot of power also to the systems to select the brands. They just give an overarching idea of what kind of diet they would like to have based on their basically political beliefs and their monetary situation, and then the system kind of sells them whatever. Then on the upper hand, we wanted to smuggle in creative technologies, the guy who is working with digital twins, and he is kind of like showcasing us everything that can be accumulated from data, how the consumers might react to different sort of changes. So it's that sort of story. And what we wanted to communicate through these scenarios is that whatever the future holds, the need to create platforms to link supply with diversifying demand and different sort of players in the value ecosystem is the route you should take, or that is a very good investment in any case. Prototypes allows us to showcase different sort of like future user interfaces and ideas. In this Abdi case, we call him SoMerchant or social media merchant. He has his own portfolio where he is kind of like pitching his ideas of what would be these good hand-picked groceries to use if you really want to cook Abdi style. So you can already imagine that it demands different sort of things from the platform. It requires these sort of local platforms, small brands, and ability to even move them to maybe even other corner of the world. And we also spend a lot of time thinking about the ecological aspects of such development, but yeah, maybe that could be another talk then. But anyways, in this scenario, as I told, you can, if you want to find out the things that Abdi is cooking with, you can use your first of all your device to find out what are his products, and then you can navigate to them in a shop. Because shopping in real time in real life shopping is really a big thing in this scenario still. So the story highlights about the kind of like societal aspect and the societal importance of shopping real time, and kind of like going through the shelves and comparing products to each other, and the way that also kids and families learn about the material context of our existence through shops. So it has this sort of like underlying purpose. And also there's a lot of like ideas also about how can physical shops keep relevant, and how you can do like probably different sort of events. We took a lot of like cues from how the Eastern shopping cultures have evolved, how they have these Black Fridays and Singles Days and these like key events.
Yeah, I was going to ask this about real-time shopping. Like, does it mean that as the audience of this particular guy, I am doing the real-time shopping with him as he does it somewhere, or am I observing, like he's basically broadcasting the real-time shopping? What was the
yeah,
or both? I mean, it's an interesting concept, and I totally relate to that.
Yeah, it's both. So basically, you could visit his Instagram profile and see what are the products he trusts, and you could like shop them immediately from his feed. But then if you would want to visit the local shop, you could find through your augmented reality devices kind of the stuff that, okay, this is Abdi's kind of like path in the shop, and these are the products that he prefers. But then, of course, Abdi is telling that he is a keen audience for these kind of like slow TV things where imagine Finnish people are getting old and they will not probably be able to even visit shops, but it's still a big part of their experience. So we kind of like foresee this scenario where we might actually want to see somebody go through the shelves in a shop and talk about different sort of cheeses or jams or cereals. We have a kind of very big audience for all kind of unpacking at the same time. For instance, you can watch from YouTube people who have just ordered candy from different side of, let's say, Japan, and they are going through what they have purchased and how they taste. So it's kind of like broadening of that idea.
Who is orchestrating this? Who's giving Abdi the motivation, like financial motivation?
It's exactly what happens when you have a very good prototype. You start to think about that. And we did some like steps to think about the business models behind them. But of course, Abdi would need to be incentivized. Like he would be kind of like getting some sort of like money based on each of these buying. And of course, when we are working with customer like Kesko, who is building this sort of like platform, then we want to make them believe that they will have some sort of like mechanism of feeding these influencers in a kind of like very productive way for both of them. So they get the kind of like content and interest and marketing for their products, and they work as a platform, and probably some sort of Spotify model. The producers get some, the platform gets some, the influencer gets some. But I'd be happy to go further with this sort of like kind of like modeling who gets what in this situation, and how do the kind of like local platforms orchestrate the demand in different sort of parts of world so that it doesn't become a kind of like ecological nightmare. That's my 5 cents. I don't know. But remember, these are starting points, and this is where we start to think like about the business models and who gets what. In the next one, it's a more maybe simple thing. It's this sort of like you give your data and you get a mass customized product package every week. But Laura is a breast cancer survivor. She also has a lot of like business understanding, so she's able to tell us a lot about like interesting things about the business environment. There's a new company called Boast. Boast has come to the market and is working as this sort of like plug that allows everything to happen, this sort of like ecosystem manager in a way. So you can see that she has a very simple user interface where she has decided which data she is giving. We were talking like health records here, We were talking about sports trackers. We were talking about genome-based data. Of course, in this sort of situation, you start to be suspicious. Does the shop really need all this data? But we felt that the trust that people, for instance, if you're in a vulnerable situation, that you've had some sickness, and remember, Finns are aging, for instance, you might want to trust your retail organizer to give you the best possible package to survive, to be healthy, young, pretty, energetic. So she wants to be understood and nurtured by the service while spending as little time shopping as possible. So this is, so she gets a femi diet. We were wondering, like, is it like wise to talk about feminine things versus masculine things? But in the end, we thought that, yeah, feminine, our biological system is very, very special. And we wanted to kind of highlight that this is a very intimate thing for Laura. And we wanted to highlight that if things go right, people might actually want to trust these sort of systems. Why Boast has become so influential is, of course, the fact that they are able to deliver the goods every week very promptly, and she gets them delivered to her home. And so the last mile delivery is something that everybody in retail business knows that needs to go right, or otherwise you will kind of lose the competition. This next scenario is about Maija-Liisa, who is a senior nurse. She's kind of like elderly lady, but she's still working. Nobody gets a pension, right? So she's somewhere in Eastern Finland, in countryside, living there, and she reports of a world that is like really polarized politically.
I have a question because it's come up a couple of times from with Tugberg in the product office and also in the recent Bosch project. One of the big futures that we foresee is this idea around, well, there's this whole part around blended lives, right? And the augmented form of engaging with these consumers. I was just curious, especially from a retail perspective, and something that we reported on quite a bit in the Bosch part was, how are you seeing that from your research in terms of the use of things like AR and VR to really kind of, as you say, augment that form of engagement with consumers in the future? So from a brand perspective, perhaps more than not just a retailer's perspective, but is that prevalent within some of these futures you see?
Yeah, for the first one, definitely. So we have this, we don't even have the data to back this up. So for instance, augmented reality, maybe VR as well, but augmentation is something that we have been waiting for a long time to actually like take off and become relevant. And we have no evidence to show you that it's actually taking off, but we believe in it. So in the scenarios, we kind of like, it's just so easy to see the benefits that it could kind of like provide for consumers. And still we have a lot of like brick and mortar space. And if you want to navigate that space, you know, in a rational way, it would make sense that, for instance, if I have irritable bowel syndrome, I wouldn't have to like study every product myself, but my mobile device could lead me to the safe products. So I think that the value proposition in that situation from the user's point of view is such that I have been like wondering why it doesn't kind of like start to fly. There are always like these worries that it will be kind of like a place that is filled with trash and ads, and kind of like something that is only trying to not help you, but to grab your attention in a kind of like shallow and superficial way. But I have to say that it has a role in these scenarios. It's based on what we as the makers of the report are believing it, maybe more than the evidence is showing at the moment. Yeah.
No, that's great. No, it's like I say, one interesting data point that we pulled out is this. They talk about the virtual economy being sized around $100 billion at the moment. And that element of how brands, especially from a retail perspective, are going to be, what is their role in that? So in the physical environment, they're very much obviously already established and have their methods. But how do you therefore start to balance your engagement not only in a physical stance but in a virtual one, because of the growth in that level, and hence why the the use of these kind of augmented. But really appreciate the work. It's really interesting.
Thanks.
I think one of the things that we hear about AR, especially in the retail space, if you talk about brick and mortars, is the amount of information nowadays needed to be communicated to the end user through the packages. The package space is getting filled and filled every day with sustainability information, with health-related information, and there is not enough space anymore. So one of the areas that comes up, like for example, Bernard were yesterday saying that how can we, like through packages or some other means, give means to the audience, to end user, to compare products in terms of if they're fulfilling their sustainability goals, what is the carbon footprint of this product versus this product, etc. So it comes up a lot, the augmented reality part, but the problem with the physical, like augmented reality on brick and mortar, is that it relies on the ability of your phone, and we're not there yet where technically it is possible to support a massive consumer base, both from the use point of view, like user experience point of view, but also technical robustness point of view. It's not there yet, though. Now, like Apple and Android, some of these features actually come out of the package. So I think the future of augmented reality looks bright, not bleak, if I might say. In that sense.
I could also add to that we have these trends in the trend part where kind of the products are kind of beautiful inside out, like you want to trace back where it comes from, and it's really big, all this sustainability and responsible, like origins of the materials and source materials, where they come from. It's really important topic for the end customers to know exactly, so the demand for this knowledge, it's going to be even more in the future. If I think about the research, I would like people to remember that it's not just betting on one future, but having these different digital and alternatives existing at the same time for different people.
Yeah, one important use for that I just came up yesterday when Kesko's Tuomas Sointu was talking, was that they are very much believe in hybrid commerce, which means that the thing that you are Googling or finding from internet, you can find it easily in the shopping space. You can maybe try it on, and maybe then eventually you will do the shopping again through digital devices. Who knows? But anyways, it's important to find that product, that exact product and the exact size. So there's a lot of use cases in that. I will quickly go through the rest of the scenarios, the couple that we have left, and then just say something very important about the prototyping processes. So this is the polarized scenario where people are fighting over what is it okay to use in your kind of cooking and the clothes that you are wearing. So it's this sort of very bleak view where our customers, such as Kesko, for instance, would have to be very politically correct and very diplomatic and trying to cater to different sort of audiences. There are also interesting business cases behind the use of voice UI. In the case that people are not so interested to kind of tell the voice UI exactly which brand they want to order, there could be a lot of power again to the middleman or the kind of ecosystem orchestrator to decide what to sell to whom in which circumstances. Then there's the restructuring services to digital twins. So this is a kind of full-blown digital twin story. Our contributors and partners were very interested in digital twins, and they kind of had maybe hard times understanding what they are. But basically, our understanding is that as you gather a lot of big data and it's just everywhere, you just need to be able to make it useful, and the kind of opportunity to simulate stuff before you actually do different kind of changes in your environment is then the kind of key use case here. So Omppu is a doctoral student who is doing this sort of work and is able to try out different sort of things before before they're done. And he has like very good visibility of what happens in this sort of like a shopping mall brand center. He has like a bird eye on that. And why this is also a little bit gloomy scenario is that people are, of course, then wondering about the visibility, security, and surveillance issues in this sort of situation. And of course, the next stage is also like it's pretty easy to, for instance, if you think about this lady who's giving all her data, that she needs some sort of visibility, what sort of data sources she is kind of like giving permission to use. So the user interfaces come like directly from these discussions. The imaginary companies, the imaginary user interfaces, the imaginary packaging of different sort of products, everything kind of like follows really easily when you do a really good like background research. The production of these images was fairly economical, but it's important for the process where you are trying to create innovations. These images are there to create these sort of like new discursive spaces where you can talk about future in a way that is not really possible if you are only dealing with like cool blueprints. And if you are only looking at like, oh, this is an interesting technology, let's see what kind of business model we might be able to build around it. We need this like storytelling to get people on the same page.
Like it's such a huge field, right? And such an uncertain future. How do you cope with the uncertainty during the research phase? I mean, I would assume that there's like a ton of like different avenues to pursue, and then you have to decide for one and leave out another, and maybe can't go back, at least after a certain point. And like, does it feel this uncertain all along the way, or is it is it so clear if you've done the research and trend scanning and etc. that it's easy to, I mean, not easy, but like that it's more intuitive to like get to those, for example, to those personas and scenarios?
In the beginning, when we had the big Pestle analysis of everything that the community had given to us, and we were trying to fill in the blanks, we immediately knew that we weren't gonna become experts on everything that is in the area of retail. That is impossible. So I still feel that there's a lot of like jewels in that like original work. And then when you are making the decisions like what to include and what to exclude, you kind of like try to you buy these like expensive reports that are kind of like all of them are saying the same dull things. So as a company like Futurice, we also want to provoke a little bit. So we want to raise, for instance, we were talking about augmented reality. Maybe that is not the trendiest thing at the moment. In a way, it has been in the landscape for a long time, but it's not something that is like earth-shattering or that way very interesting. But we have our own belief systems, and we also want to kind of like keep true to things that we think are maybe a good indicator is like what makes people talk and imagine. So that is a good indicator of what is actually important. And there's always this sort of like you said, nagging disbelief that am I able to even say something relevant about the thing that is this big? But then you just need to be brave and trust that if you say something, it will cause some sort of discussion, and it will be a tool for getting us closer to what is actually relevant.
I think it's also the power of the ecosystem and the power of the collaboration. I think we have had really good discussions with everyone during this process.
How does it feel to work in this kind of, ecosystem mode, if I may call it? Like you did trend research on your own as well, for some cases, without, having this big group of people that is expert in the domain, giving opinion. What is the big difference? When I look at for example, the crowdsourcing, we have had 100+ people, but mostly Futurice people. Would you have had a particular group in that ideation that you would like to have included?
Of course, it's good to always kind of be able to check up that, yes, this resonates. And we were always like keeping an eye on like what resonates with them and what they find is important. It's also marketing. So the things that we select in the report are the stuff that have connection with what we have to offer. We are talking about stuff that we can solve. Very good idea about using very young people to kind of like validate your findings. Let's do futures together. Let's try to find gigs where we can do like design fiction and prototyping together. It's very important.
I think so too.
See you later.